Today we're going to be talking about War Dogs. War Dogs is a movie you've seen before. If you've seen Lord of War, or you've seen that Tom Cruise movie where he plays a pilot smuggling stuff into the country, you've seen this movie. War Dogs is about a couple of gun runners during the Bush administration smuggling guns to the army in the Middle East. And the army's actually paying them for it, because the army doesn't really care where it comes from so long as you manage to hide your trail so that they don't get in trouble for getting the ammunition. All they care about is getting the ammunition. So the war dogs have to make sure they get the material to the army so that the army can continue to do what it's there to do without worrying about supply chains and all of that stuff. We have the perspective character of Miles Teller, who is a massage therapist in, I want to say, California or something like that. He's in a tropical, subtropical climate, so it's probably California or Miami. And Jonah Hill is the gun runner. He is they were childhood friends when they were growing up, and then when they grew up, they were split up by their parents and all that stuff, and then they meet again at a funeral, and Jonah Hill tells Miles Teller that he is a gun runner now, and he wants to hire Miles Teller to be his partner in his new business, and he's trying to expand the business and all that stuff. When you hear Jonah Hill talk, you've heard him talk before. This is basically the Superbad character of Jonah Hill, being Jonah Hill from Superbad if he were a gun runner. It's essentially the same idea. He has essentially the same arc mostly, though he does kind of he's a little worse in this one than he was at Superbad. I don't mean worse as in a bad actor, but worse as in his character that he plays is a worse person. Miles Teller is obviously the moral heart of the story. He's the one who's a little bit iffy on all of the morally gray things that they're doing. One of the morally gray things that they're doing is one of the big gigs that they get, the big contract that they get from the army. They need to move in like 1 million rounds of assault rifle ammunition into the country, and they end up getting a deal through Bradley Cooper, who is a very savvy gun runner who's been around for quite a while, probably during the Desert Storm era even, who knows. He's banned from dealing with the U.S., so he wants to deal tertiarily through these two so that he can make a profit off the deal because it's his supplier. So he supplies the supplier, and he gets a cut for them being able to complete the contract. And the contract is going to, I want to say it's Romania or some other Eastern European country, to get Soviet-era ammunition that's just been laying around for years. And they find boxes and boxes and boxes of it to get it for like maybe 10 cents on the bullet or something like that, 10 cents on the dollar. It is a very good deal. But the only problem is all of the boxes are Chinese ammunition, and the U.S. doesn't like Chinese ammunition. And so Jonah Hill, he pulls a big brain move. He picks up one of the bullets, and he asks Miles Teller, "Hey, do you see any Chinese markings on this bullet?" And Miles Teller says, No, I don't see any Chinese markings on this bullet. And so Jonah Hill picks up one of the boxes and says, "Do you see any Chinese markings on this box?" And Miles Teller says, Yeah, I see Chinese markings on this box. And so Jonah Hill picks up some of the bullets and puts it in another box. And he picks up this box and says, "Do you see any Chinese markings on this box?" And Miles says, "No, I don't see anything on that box." And so Jonah Hill says, "We're going to put all of the bullets in these boxes into these other boxes without Chinese markings on it, and we'll say they're not from China. And that's how we get to do the deal." And Miles Teller is a little bit, he's going like, "Well, isn't that immoral?" He's pulling a Neil Breen there. But Jonah Hill says, "Hey, you want to get paid?" And so Miles Teller is okay with it, and, well, not really okay with it, but he's keeping the books, he's keeping the receipts and all of that stuff, and he's going along with it because it's a very, very lucrative deal. But then Jonah Hill gets a little bit too greedy and tries to cut people out of his deals, such as Bradley Cooper. And Bradley Cooper's a little bit angry about that, and he goes after Miles Teller and holds him at gunpoint until he realizes that Miles Teller was screwed over by Jonah Hill as well, and so he lets him live. And so Miles Teller, angry at what's been going on, ends up coming clean to the U.S. about the deal and all the shady stuff that they're big going on. So Jonah Hill gets prison time, and Miles Teller only gets house arrest for a while. After his house arrest, he meets up with Bradley Cooper, and Bradley Cooper says, I want to thank you for keeping my name out of your testimony, and I'm going to uphold my part of the bargain. And he hands over a big briefcase full of cash, and he says, don't ask any questions about this deal. And so Miles Teller has decided not to ask any questions about the deal. He takes the money, and everybody lives happily ever after, except for Jonah Hill, who has screwed everybody over and gets to rot. And that's what you get for betraying your friends. You don't do that stuff, And so Miles Teller gets to be happy. He's got a wife. He's got a beautiful child, and he gets to have his family and his cash, and Bradley Cooper gets to make one of the biggest deals. I think he did pull through on that deal. He made quite a big buck on it, and everybody's happy except for Jonah Hill. War Dogs is a film you've seen before, especially if you've seen Lord of War. If you liked Lord of War, you may like War Dogs. If you like Lord of War and Superbad, you will definitely like War Dogs. That's all I've got to say on that one.